also he's presented so many papers in international sponsored programs. And also he is the awardee of Asian Pacific Trade Facilitation Forum 2017 Trade Facilitation Award. We are happy to hear, sir. On behalf of CCS National Institute of Agriculture Marketing, I would like to welcome you. Sir is presenting revitalization, agriculture export and solution to boost the economy today. And also I would like to welcome all the participants. So today's participant from national and international level also, participant from the Malawi, Uganda, then Nepal, and also participant from several organizations from India. So on behalf of National Institute of Agriculture Marketing, I would like to welcome all the participants for this training program. And I would request all the participants, so you're having any queries and questions, once the presentation is complete, so you can put the questions in your chat box, or otherwise we'll allow you people to ask the question. So don't ask any question in between the presentation. So I'm not take much more time. I would hand over to Dr. Hema Madam to introduce the today's program and faculties and themes. Thank you, Madam. Madam, please.
Good morning to all of you. Satyendra, am I audible?
Yes, madam. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Please.
Okay. Good morning to all the participants for joining us today morning. Participants from the country, as well as the participants from Uganda and other countries. We are very pleased to have you here on board on this webinar meeting. And as the theme has been well introduced by Dr. Satyendra, that this is the Center for International Program at NIAM, Jaipur. And the theme for today is to kind of discuss about the agri-export. With specific reference to India, we'll be talking about how agri-exports have kind of affected by the COVID pandemic, and what are the ways to revitalize it. You must have been following the policies that have been announced for the agriculture marketing, as well as the policy and the financial stimulus that has been announced to revitalize the whole domestic sector in the country, agriculture being part of it. So a lot of reforms has taken place, a lot of programs and policy changes is what we have seen in last 2 months, which is quite a commendable thing that has happened in the country. As far as the agri-exports are concerned, we do see that there has been a big gap in the agri-exports. And there are some points that we need to kind of look into as to why agri-exports have suffered and why agri-exports are important for us. And we also need to understand that agri-exports need to be revitalized in this policy framework. So having said this, we are all aware where marketable surplus is concerned in our country. We have a high production where poultry is concerned, livestock and cereals and fruits and vegetables are concerned. Every year we produce 1 billion plus metric ton of the produce is what it is the total throughput of what we produce, including livestock, poultry, cereals, oilseeds that we produce in the country, which is very huge amount of production that we do. Owing to high production, we also have higher marketable surplus, but higher marketable surplus does not reflect in the global market. I mean, our presence in the global market is not that too high, in spite of we being the number one producers where fruits and vegetables are concerned. So now, what are those factors which are kind of holding back to kind of go to the agri-exports? Number one, we have to identify the clusters that are available, which can have an export market. We also see that in export market, 80% of agri-exports will be going to the Middle East countries and the countries in the Asian countries. Having access to the foreign countries, European countries, becomes very difficult due to high tariffs and high phytosanitary and non-tariff barrier issues, which kind of are costly for us to adhere also. But having said this, nevertheless, it's time to invest into these technologies and into identifying the clusters. One of the most important things that has happened in these times where the policy is concerned is that we have, in order to align the agri products to the exports, we also have to see that how investment can come, specifically agri export, by increasing the processable throughput that we have, increasing the processing, because the trade in the agri export is in the processed products, not so much in the raw products. So we have to shift our attention from the fresh and raw to coming to the processed ones. And how the clusters, the aggregation can take place. That is, we have farmers, cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, SHGs, and how supply chain agents can all be brought together and they can be oriented towards the global supply chains. Now, this orientation is different from what we do in the domestic scenario. We have to get orientations to the norms of the international trade, where production is concerned, storage, packaging, transportation, handling norms are concerned. The whole supply chain has to be oriented to sales. This is the right time to do all these kind of changes and orientation in the agriculture sector. And this is the right time where the agribusiness environment is concerned in the country. We can kind of take some time in building those domestic efficiencies, competitiveness, and make ourselves more competitive in the export market. So, so in this today's session, what we are going to discuss is Dr. Tamanna is going to give you a very detailed scenario about the Indian agri-exports and where are the gaps, what we need to do it. Because she being from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade has done an extensive research on the exports. She has analysis of the which countries are competitive. She has done her competitive analysis. She has done a trade intensity analysis, etc. And she's very well versed with these scenarios of where should we be kind of focusing, which products should be focused. Okay? She'll be talking about this, about the how agri-exports can be kind of improved and how we have to begin from a home, that's domestic front. Now, the second is what are the suggestions to improve the agri-exports? So, Dr. Surendra Singh would be focusing on if we need to have more agri-entrepreneurs, if we need to orient the FPOs, then it is right time to know how to start the agri-export business as well. So, if we have to venture into some agri-export supply chain for banana or grapes or mango or papaya, we need to kind of aggregate and need to understand those global standards and how to kind of get registered for the for supplying to the global markets. So Dr. Surendra would be talking about these suggestions and talk about the micro level, how we need to begin with. I hope this session would be interesting and people who have joined us, we'll be sharing the PPT with you and both the professors are available for their discussions in the email. And as he says, NIAM, we are here to kind of support you with any information that we have. Thank you so much. Now I would be requesting to Dr. Tamanna to come on board with her presentation.
Ma'am, please unmute, ma'am.
Okay. So, okay. So, friends, as Dr. Hema has categorically mentioned, I come from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, and we've been helping a lot to the government in terms of policy making. My background being in agriculture, we've been seeing for last so many months that as a matter of this perspective of coronavirus getting impacting the entire world as a pandemic now, it is very important for us to analyze many perspectives of this whole scenario. And that's the reason we thought it was great idea to share with you that what has been the challenge that Indian government is facing at the same time. There are opportunities at the same time. There are threats at the same time. So technically what we will do in next 1 hour is to help you understand the entire SWOT analysis of COVID-19 and with specific reference to the Indian agricultural exports. Now, friends, taking lead from what Dr. Hema had been indicating that India has no dearth of agricultural production. You all are coming from different locations of India, dealing with different varieties of agricultural commodities. So you certainly will agree with me that whether it is a staple crops like rice and wheat or it is a horticulture crop like fruits and vegetables, we certainly have a huge production status. Now, ये बहुत सोचने वाली बात है, guys, that if we have so much of production status in terms of rice and wheat getting stuck at the FCI Godam for fruits and vegetables, you see we are sitting on a lot of onions in Maharashtra. We are fetching the country's best grapes. Oranges are actually full in terms of specific clusters who are looking for. We have Kerala cluster where nendering bananas are there. So APIDA has identified certain beautiful clusters in the agri-export policy, which are focusing on gaining export exchange, foreign exchange coming out of these commodities. So whether it is mangoes or bananas or onion or rice and wheat, India has a huge potential when it comes to production of these commodities. And in light, if we visualize this whole production strength of India in light of the COVID analysis, we'll find that most of the countries which were giving competition to India in terms of exporters, like for example, tomatoes, potatoes. 11 states in India produces potatoes, right? But are we the largest exporter of potato in the world? Not really. If you see tomatoes for that matter, we have huge competition coming up from Spanish tomatoes capturing almost 23% market share. You don't find India anywhere. You see apples, we are the net importer of apples, where Washington apple, despite having your own agricultural belt in two states of India, full of claiming and bragging about the agricultural apple production. Same goes for the nendrin bananas. Countries, Latin American economies like Colombia, Costa Rica, they're giving us huge competition. Now, guys, even in the meat sector for that matter, which is the number one commodity of India's export. Now, this is a very interesting dynamics that on one hand, we are largest producer of the of many commodities in the world. On the other hand, we are not there anywhere in the export first of 15 exports in the country. Now, where and how this coronavirus crisis, which is across the globe, will give me an opportunity as well. It will give me a time to think and react. So, we need to do a SWOT analysis of the COVID-19 factor, which talks about, let's say, we have a production strength. So, we do have a lot of production strength, where in the absence of China, a lot of global market will actually look forward to India. That nobody has the guts and the scare of corona is shifting my buyers to procuring, and that to something like an agricultural commodity where you also have a scare. Maybe it's a myth at this point of time, but it's a scare that even through agricultural commodities that we import and we consume, that will also have corona impact somewhere down the line. So whatever China was exporting to the world, India certainly have that as an opportunity. So it's a time for us to identify which are those agricultural commodities, which are those markets where China was exporting those products, where India can get competitive advantage globally. From there comes the opportunity. But at the same time, there are also threats because if China, I mean, we are giving consulting to IFT, we're giving consulting to every council these days, council for leather exports, council for chemical exports, agricultural exports, fisheries export, where where to my surprise the government in India and exporters in India are actually taking it as a very very obvious thing that fall of China would divert trade of global market and procuring with by default start from India. But what I'm trying to showcase is that yes, people are moving out of China, whether it is in terms of investments or it is in terms of procurement of the agricultural produce. But at the same time, the world is looking for an opportunity like this. So are we the only one looking for this opportunity? Like NIAM is having this seminar today, Vietnamese for their lychee exports are having a similar webinar for their commodity within their exporters community. So fall of China is an opportunity for every other for many other countries in the world. So are we the only one looking forward for this opportunity? Are we prepared to shift our production and supply chain to cater to the world and feed the world at this time when the China is absent as a biggest competitor? So that is a time to ponder to all of us. No doubt we can have a great leap in our agricultural export as the doubling farmers' income of the Prime Minister's vision. We can double our increase of exports and doubling farmers' income, but where we have a lot of ifs and buts attached to it, right? Because there is a weakness attached to it. Now, what is the weakness? Maybe our weakness stands from the fact that our export dependency is very high on COVID hit countries in the sense that if we are exporting a lot of our agricultural commodities to very traditional markets of US and Europe in the light of in the light of the COVID hit economies, maybe it's a time to shift our export markets from US and Europe to countries like Africa, countries like Southeast Asia, where India also have a trade agreement and we can enter these markets at a much lesser import duty. So we need to understand from this perspective, there is a global retaliation against China. I mean, you must be hearing these news how Japanese companies have invested almost 220 billion yen and they have pledged to shift their production back to Japan or they are moving to other countries. So US have sent a signal of almost World War II and level warnings to China. So there is a global retaliation somewhere down the line against the China, and this is an advantage which India can look for this psychological shift against China. So please note down. After a lot of research done within us, we need to come out with certain strategic inputs. Please note down and you can identify the products from your different province and the state. COVID-19 will certainly bring a lot of huge export opportunities for Indian agro-exports in specific countries like now how does this entire opportunity analysis have been done? Let me share that thing with you as well. See, guys, the opportunity analysis has been done. For example, if India is the largest exporter of basmati rice, right? And we were exporting these rice to the European market, to the Middle Eastern market, where Thailand and Malaysia was also my competitor. Now, because of the COVID-19, somehow there has been a major change in the trade policies of the world market. So if I was exporting my rice to the African market and Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia were also exporting their rice to the same market, obviously my market share was somewhere sacrificed because of my competitors from coming from these countries. Now, if there is a tariffs policy or there is a government policy intervention from these countries that Indonesia, like for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand have taken a deliberate call and a very informed call that they will not export rice this year because they have to take care. Rice is a staple diet in Southeast Asia. So all my competition coming from Southeast Asia suddenly goes absent in the global market only because these countries have taken a call not to export rice this year, and that gives an opportunity of a rice country, which is we are a rice prominent country. So it certainly brings a lot of export opportunities. For example, groundnuts have got huge opportunities in Indonesia, Thailand. Vegetable and fruits have got huge opportunities in Middle East. Non-basmati rice in specific economies like Nigeria and Philippines as a great opportunity that COVID-19 is offering us. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, beautiful opportunity because as per our import forecastings that we have done and the simulations that we have run after post COVID-19 when the export shipments will become normal, import demand of fresh fruits and vegetables, turmeric, garlic to Gulf countries will be on high because all the restrictions and movement of goods will be eased. In the COVID-19 crisis, what has happened very beautifully that initially what used to happen that if I have to export my Alfonso mangoes to Japan, so there was a foreign inspector from Japan. He will first go to Maharashtra, he will see and audit the units, and then he will give permission to whether India can export Alfonso mango to Japan, to US. So these foreign inspectors were actually a cause of delay at most of the time. So in the COVID-19 crisis, the deputation of these foreign inspectors for pre-clearance program has been exempted for Japan, and similar exemptions are being sought. So that will actually indicate somewhere that these will boost the export of mangoes because the post-harvest losses and delayed because of these inspections will be minimized. Similarly, guys, if you see to be able to clear shipments, initially what used to happen that you need to have a proper documentation, which has to be an original documentation, duly signed, all the certificates duly signed, rules of origin duly signed by Export Inspection Council. It has to be a hard copy. Now, the APIDA has negotiated with most of the countries in Europe and Southeast Asia, Russia also, that you do not need any any hard copies, so to say, in the absence of international couriers. So government is making a lot of efforts in promoting. So undoubtedly, uh, the horticulture product exports is going to have a big boost. And specifically, the commodities where vitamin in agricultural produce, where vitamin C and the immunity story lies. Anything that has something to do with immunity boosting and anything that has to do something with vitamin C. So if your brand stories and selection of commodities for export is revolving around immunity and vitamin C content in it, which most of the fruits, citrus fruits has, you have sky is a limit for. And another very interesting consumer demand which has suddenly seen after COVID is organic broccoli. Suddenly, the global world demand has increased for organic broccoli. So, if India can be a great broccoli supplier, I think countries like Finland, countries like a lot of upper European economies have suddenly started asking. Latin America has started asking for organic broccoli. So all these are an interesting consumer shifts in certain preferences of certain commodities. Yes, India was one very great thing for India is that India did not do well in processed fruits and vegetables. But then the shift that we have seen, that the shift in consumer preference globally is now shifting to primary produce, that jitna आप raw खाओगे उतनी immunity बढ़ेगी. So somewhere there is a psychological shift and people are wanting to have fresh fruits and vegetables as compared to frozen and confectionaries and all that, right? Now, COVID-19 also, as I said, an opportunity specifically for Indian rice because of certain countries, changing their policies. Like, for example, Vietnam has temporarily stopped the export of rice. So, and Malaysia has in fact imported sugar and rice from India because we have a trade agreement with these countries. Therefore, it does make sense for us to target a Southeast Asian economy. Organic products, because there is a huge shift in consumer preference. आप जितना organic food बेच सकते हैं, countries US and sky is a limit. आप US ले जाओ, Europe ले जाओ, Middle Eastern ले जाओ, including Iran for that matter. Countries like there were very strict organic certification. आप यूरोप में कुछ बेच ही नहीं सकते थे if there is a strict stringency of certificates and compliances. But in light of the COVID, countries which were traditional destinations have reduced their norms because they are in need of organic imports. So these countries have basically looking forward for accepting the Indian commodities provided you have an authentic organic products with you. Now, in terms of investments, now this is a threat that I'm trying to build for. That as companies flee, we were expecting the investments to come into India, but we were surprised when we found that out of 56 companies, they which exited China, only three had relocated to India, and almost most of them had gone to Vietnam. 11, almost 26 have gone to Vietnam, 11 have gone to Taiwan, 8 has gone to Thailand. So where is India all about? So it's very important for us to see that we shouldn't be taking it very obvious choice of companies to start sourcing from India. We shouldn't be taking very obvious shift of companies that if not China, then India is the next source. Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. And why this is happening is because countries and companies are used to are technically used to operating in China, which is a communist country. So shifting from a communist country base to a democratic setup where you have to have a lot of policy changes, you have APMC Act, you have a state level, agriculture is a state subject in India. So it is actually difficult. Now please understand, friends, there are two different things that we are talking about. We're talking about the investment choice of countries, and we're also talking about the sourcing choice of countries. So please remember, from an investment point of view, maybe FDI inflows in agricultural sector may not be a great concept. But yes, sourcing is something that the commodities, agricultural commodities produced in India, authentic certifications, world is looking for sourcing these commodities from India. What are these commodities? Now, the threat also comes for countries like, for example, bananas for that matter. The prime competing exporters in the world, where India has been exporting bananas. We've been exporting our bananas to Iran, to Saudi Arabia, to Oman, most of the Middle Eastern market. In each of these countries, we have been facing competition from Philippines, from Ecuador. Now India's share is 14%, for example, in UAE for our banana exports. But we also need to see that not every competing countries are COVID hit. So in light of the absence of China, it is Philippines who will start giving you competition in UAE. It will Philippines and Ecuador who will again start giving you competition in Saudi for your bananas. Potatoes for that matter. I was surprised 11 states in India produces, and we are the largest potato producer in the world. We should be expecting that in the absence of China, world should go gaga about Indian potatoes, because potato is something that is widely consumed. French fries, McCain, processed products. So raw material is something that India, but you see, again in countries like Malaysia, Bangladesh and US were giving us competition, where India has just 5% as against Bangladesh having 12% in Malaysia total imports of potatoes. Indonesia was a great importer and one of the focus market for the potato exports from India. But again, you find Egypt giving huge competition. We shouldn't be taking situation for granted, but that doesn't mean that we do not have the potential. So I've tried to give you a very, very handy exercise. These are the commodities which are top commodities. The ones that you see in yellow color is an immediate advantage to India due to the fall of China. It is in honey. If somebody wants to invest in honey export, this is an immense opportunity because we have a decent amount of share. The world is demanding honey because it is an immunity booster. India is one of the largest supplier, global supplier. The only competitor that we had in the world market was China, which is capturing 11% market share. After the fall of China, it is quite likely that the world would look forward to India for its honey products. Then we also have a huge potential. The ones that you see in green color, they are advantage to India against other COVID impact countries. So we see that from the poultry products, we will find a huge market because other countries are also COVID hit as compared to India. So for our poultry products and for a lot of millets. Now, 2023 is a country which is it is an year of International Year of Millets. India is one of the largest producer, and we also have a lot of potential of sourcing millets from India. Then we also have a great opportunity in, as I said, fruits and vegetables. As I said, also indicated that we have a huge competition and an opportunity. So we have both. We just a second. Okay, sorry. So we had both opportunity as well as we also have to see that in order to take this opportunity, whether it comes in horticulture sector, it comes in herbal tea, anything, India is full of herbal commodities, Ayurveda commodities. So if you see that from a consumer perception perspective, the consumer shifts are moving in very interesting sectors. Consumer shifts are moving there on physical fitness. Consumer perceptions are moving on spiritualism. Consumer perceptions are moving in terms of health and fitness. Consumer preferences are coming in concepts like yoga products. So India is a sourcing from an agri perspective, anything which is Ayurveda, anything which is herbal, anything which are herbal spices for that matter, Ayurveda spices for that matter. So India is a land of these Ayurveda commodities. So if foreign companies want to source something from India for all these herbal concepts, which is something related to health, whether it is honey or herbal spices or millets or horticulture, which is organic product, COVID-19, post COVID-19, it is just a gaga from an Indian perspective, right? Let's take a view that we have India in terms, and we will also have a sustainability of sourcing because India is the largest producer of spices in the world. India is the largest producer after China. India is the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables. So in terms of sustainability of supply, companies will not have any issues because India has almost 8 to 9 agroclimatic zones. So if one and let's take for example mangoes. We have 1,500 varieties of mangoes in India. So and different states producing the same commodities across different seasons. So there's a sustainability of sourcing at certain point that is assured if companies, and that is one reason why companies are shifting from China to India. Coffee, cotton, coconuts, sugarcane, cashew nuts, rice and wheat, of course. So we have immense production potential, and we need to now for for exploiting this opportunity. Where are we losing is something we have to talk about, guys. That no, undoubtedly India will have a big boost of agricultural sector, but are we prepared for it in terms of telling them the right time, the right quality, the right non-tariff barrier, the right trade agreement? Because outside we have 200 countries in the world, but amongst these 200 countries in the world, how do you think that which market is the best market for your exports? And if we have to increase our export competitiveness, now that we know we are sitting on such huge production potential, every state has a unique agricultural commodity. Go to north, you have apples. Go to east, you have a lot of rice, fisheries. Go to central India, you have full of forestry products. You are full of lac. You have full of gum. Then you go to here, go to Maharashtra. You are sitting with a lot of hub of horticulture products. You have Maharashtra again coming in floricultural products, where Pune cluster is full of a lot of variety of chrysanthemum, roses, and all these floriculture exports. Now you go to northeast again, it is full of spices, organic products, buckwheat. So the idea is that we are full of the sourcing that is possible. But what we are missing, guys, technically is, are we ready to supply at a right price? Because at the end of the day, it is all about the price story. How competitive are you against a Nandrin banana versus a Costa Rica banana is what will be the decisive factor of companies whether I source this commodity from India or I go elsewhere. So, what needs to be done from a price point of view? What needs to be done from a quality standpoint? And from there comes the demand side issues. I do not need to enter the market at a very high import duty. That I source it from India, but I target the US market. That makes the complete story a failure story. But if I source it from India, to supply it to a Brazilian market, the same commodity will go a very big hit for a simple reason because I have an Indo-Mercosur trade agreement where Brazil have offers us 0% rate of duty. So it becomes very important for us to understand from where should we source this commodity from India and which should be the right market to sell this commodity. Now, how does it come is the entire story. So let's take the first point. In terms of a supply side issues, it's very important for traders who are wanting to start and invest their money that now what? If COVID is offering such a huge opportunity and there is a huge production potential in India, should I force source it from India? Oh my God. If you see the mangoes and if you do a mistake of procuring mangoes from India, but for the US market, I'm lost because Mexicans will give me huge competition. $6,462 per ton of Alfonso mangoes versus 840. And this is, my dear, this is just the CIF price. Now, Indian mangoes will enter at the WTO rate of duty. Mexican and US have a trade agreement amongst themselves. They will enter at 0% rate of duty. So the 6,462 अभी और भी महंगा होने वाला है. So we have to understand that India is a great country. But should I take it for the US market? India is a great country for Darjeeling tea. But is US is the right market? Where countries like Kenya are giving me huge competition. I have competition coming from countries like Vietnam. And Vietnam is a least developed economy. India is a developing country. So, as a matter and a principle of WTO, the least developed countries' products will be preferred at a much lesser import duty as compared to the same product coming from a developing country. So, I need to understand that procurement of a product, identifying the right procurement source as India, but do I make the right connect between the markets that I sell? So we technically try to understand from rice in UK for that matter, guys. Now India, we are the largest producer of rice in the world. But if I procure rice not for Nigerian market but for the UK market, I'm lost. I lose the market. It's 1,080 dollars per ton of rice by the time we reach the UK port, as compared to Brazil, as compared to Thailand. So all what I'm trying to drive home the point is sourcing is great, but identifying the right market at the same time is equally important for traders and the companies who would like to invest into certain sectors where the consumption patterns are going to shift. India has a nice, it's a beautiful story. I know that the world is demanding this agricultural commodity post-COVID. I know India is a great sourcing, but I need to match the commodity and the market perfectly. Price is one point where import duties play a very important role. Therefore, we will enter into the analysis of in which country India has a tariff benefits as against the competing player. Before we move to the analysis of a trade agreement and matching the product, we need to understand, oh, if I procure grapes from India, but for the European market, oh my God, European Union has objected to excessive growth hormones which are present in the grapes. So, are the commodity, whether I source it from India, I source it from Africa, any country for that matter, and the market and the buyer where I'm looking for, is there a commodity ban in that market? Is there a pesticide issue going in that market? After China, Vietnam is likely to ban the agri-imports from India. And then same goes live animal export. Australia rejects the live animal exports from India. So what is the benefit of India being such a huge producing market? Now, so we need to take care of pricing. We need to take care of quality. We need to take care of market intelligence. Let's see what can we do in terms of the pricing. Now, what happens? Why is Indian mangoes so bloody huge in terms of prices? What goes wrong? So the point, if my audience have a mix of policy makers as well, point to concern, sir. As a state agricultural officers, you need to understand where am I coming from. If India has to take advantage of the huge rise in demand of agricultural commodities, right, we need to understand that why my product is getting so. If I'm producing so much, why am I not able to export? And where is it going at the end of the day? Why my products are so non-price competitive? Here is the answer, that I start with a very small land holding. If you imagine, guys, the average land holding size of Indian is, because of your land ceiling acts and all these policies of India, we have an average land holding size of 1.22 or 2 hectares as compared. Now imagine, guys, I want to sell my rice to the US market. Now, there may be, whenever I'm exporting, a trader or a policymaker has to understand, whenever I want to export, I face competition at 3 levels. One, as a company, you are not the only company in India who will export rice. There are thousand other companies, or maybe many thousand other companies who are also exporting the same product that your company will start with. Point number two, the, the level two competition comes. Oh, why India? You have Thailand exporting rice, you have Vietnam exporting rice, Philippines, Malaysia, Pakistan, Bangladesh. You have many countries in the world exporting the same commodity. Level three competition, the market where you target to export your commodity, maybe there are local farmers in the same market who are also producing and bringing that market in the consumer. So consumer has all the choice. He has a choice of procuring a good quality, cheap US made rice versus an Indian basmati rice. So if I start with a very small land holding where I produce at a small land holding of less than 2 hectares, and the market where I want to sell is an average land holding of 119 hectares where farm mechanizations are done, you really think you will find a buyer in that market? Your price will ever be competitive against the companies and farmers who are doing the rice production much better than you? There comes the absence of technology interventions, poor yield levels, efficient supply chain management, your domestic logistics, all in toto. By the time you reach the port, what do I do with this produce because the damage is already done? Then it is high import duties to enter that market. You pay the freight charges, which is logistically very far off in countries like US. And then I have, in the absence of a trade agreement, I end up paying such a huge tariff rate. How the hell do you think? And what do you do with this produce at the end of the day? So I need to take all these things in total and not take things for granted. You see the commodity perception levels. I was surprised to see a small country like Peru. You have sugarcane. I mean, I brag of having the largest player in the world for sugarcane production, but my yield, which is tons per hectare, is 66 tons per hectare as compared to 125 tons per hectare for Peru. Small countries like Cape Verde, 40.6 tons per hectare of mangoes as compared to 6.3 for India. And I am the largest producer. I claim to be having 1,500 varieties of mango in India. Tomatoes, for that matter, you can look for tomatoes. Point number 11, Belgium, 524.9 tons per hectare as compared to 19.3 for India. So it's all about a Misr, Israel for fresh fruits. You see countries like Turkey, Nicaragua giving us competition for our groundnuts. So if we have such small yield levels and my competitors who are less COVID hit, you will face competition in the global market. Where if I have to look between India and Nicaragua, I obviously will go to countries where the yield levels are high, their sustainability will be high. I have to initiate a buying and a selling decisions for long-term period. And if the yield levels are high, my economies of scale are low because of land size being small, and then I have an unorganized structure where you have a long and inefficient supply chain, so that in totality, with 94% markup in the whole chain, you technically try to get a lot of challenges in getting a very competitive pricing. So there are many new companies that are coming. This is a Microsoft India AI-based sowing apps where it is helping the companies to determine or farmers to determine the right time to sow the crops at where will be the excessive rainfall. And Microsoft, in collaboration with ICRISAT, has developed an artificial intelligence sowing app. So beyond what government is doing, there are private companies who are helping the farmers to take a decision: what should you sow and when should you sow, so that by the time your crop is mature enough to come, you coincide with the rising consumer demand in one of your great markets where you have a price advantage. Then, therefore, in order to get into the high price, you need to liberalize the land ceiling markets. You need to work on your export infrastructure. So, if my audience have some policymakers, this is extremely important for us to have a green logistics corridor, because world demand is shifting from processed products to perishable commodities or the fresh commodities. So, it's high time India should now have foreign direct investments on developing green corridors, which are logistics corridors. Then we have requested APIDA, and APIDA has requested Ministry of Commerce uh, to, to, to basically ask for transport assistance subsidies both for inland transport as well as international trade. Now, there is a mechanism. We are working very closely. IFT and APIDA is working very closely to develop a supply-demand forecasting on pricing, on international supply, on demand, and before deciding on any export ban. You cannot suddenly ban a commodity. By the time you are ready to supply, the government ban the commodity export. So we are trying to work on that mechanism, and all these all data points will be disseminated through a mobile app to the farmers. So government is trying to take a lot of interest on the rising consumer demands post-COVID, and we are trying to actually make a lot of changes in our APMC Act, and I'm sure you'll have certain sessions on changes in these rules. But this is such a right time to introduce these changes if India wants to take advantage of these. Then comes very important, guys. I work on my supply chain. I work on my policy that's under my control. But when I reach at the door and I knock the door of a market where I want to enter, where maybe the consumptions post COVID may be on rise, but unfortunately, they will not allow me to enter because of a very high import duty. So exporters should know for product by product which country will offer them what rate of duty. Is there any change of duty after the corona crisis? Do they want to protect the countries? So how do you get the information on what is the import duty levels? You can note down a name of a website where on click of the mouse you get the applied rate of duty across 10,000 commodities in 200 countries. This is macmap.org. macmap.org, which is an international trade database, which is free of cost for India and other least developed countries. It is paid for the developed economy, but www.macmap, this is called as Market Access Map. This gives you the import duty across the globe, across almost not only agriculture commodities, but across all the products that you can possibly think of. So HS code by HS code, it gives you the import duty. So it is very important for me to understand that if I'm procuring a product from India at a right price, it shouldn't be the factor that I target and find a buyer in a market where tariff walls are so high that my entire profit margins are lost because of the import duty, not because of my mistake as a trader. So tariff walls is something that you need to work out. Then you have to work out that if I target, so for example, India is also producing maize. So if I procure maize from India and I target the US market, then the U and where the government has highly subsidized the maize market. You can never ever compete against the maize farmers in the US because US government is offering huge subsidies on the maize sector. So the locally available maize of US will be so cheap that even if you are the largest producer of maize and you target this maize, we will not be able to satisfy the consumers in terms of the pricing and the quality that is available locally in the US market. So I should be knowing what is the important structures of my commodity in the market that I'm trying to target. I should also be looking forward for what is the subsidy levels for that commodity which I want to export to that market. And finally, what are the import regulations in that market for my product? So I'll give you the database. Before I finish my class, I'll give you a live demo. Where can you find this information? So that, and where can you even find the buyers in these countries so that you can pick up a product from India and start looking for your business right away. Now, in terms of tariffs, so one is many a times you will see that you have a great incentives attached as an export policy to start doing a processed commodity. That if you do a processed commodity, you get a lot of benefits when you export. But then you have to take a right choice. For example, this concept is called as tariff escalation. That it is very important for me to be very precise that, oh my God, I want to target the European market because I'm sitting with a lot of grapes in Maharashtra. Now I want to settle and I'm looking for a buyer because I see a lot of colleagues of mine who've been doing successful business of grapes in Europe. But then I have a bright idea. Oh my God, I see a lot of my farmer colleagues, FPOs, and traders doing a very great business of grapes in the European market. यार मैं एक काम करता हूँ grapes क्यों करूँ? Let me do grape juice in the European market because maybe a processed product is more acceptable in a market and here is what to make a wrong decision. Because if you see in Europe, the import duty on grapes is 18%, but grape juice is 215%. So this is called tariff escalation because the commodity may be imported into Europe because European grape juice makers are buying grapes from you. So they're more than happy to give you a lower rate of duty. If you convert grape into grape juice without understanding your buyer, then you will completely lose the grape market also and your grape juice market will never be settled for you because at 215% rate of duty, you invested a huge in Indian market to convert grape into grape juice, and you went again to the same trade fair of the European market, and you do not find buyer because at 215%, who will buy your grape juice? This concept is called as tariff escalation, where the import duties on primary agricultural commodities are much lesser. As and when you move high up the value chain, the import duty increases. Semi-processed, light commodities, if you convert uh, if you convert that into resins, all the more greater duty. Because the whole objective is that a country who was buying a raw material, maybe they are buying it for the purpose of utilizing and making their own processed food industry. Now, if you convert and start giving them process industry, you become a competitor to them. So please, when you are making these value addition and big jargons that the government throws on you that India should actually upgrade themselves in global value chain, please be very cautious about tariff escalation because in the pursuit of going higher up the value chain and global value chain and not taking care of the right market, and you end up in the entire hassle of tariff escalation. You lose the market of primary products. You cannot establish yourself in the processed products, right? So be very, very cautious about choosing the right market. Yes, I don't say conversion of primary into process is a bad idea. I completely wet what Dr. Hema was saying. Of course, the price elasticities of demand is much higher. The shelf lives are much higher. Post-harvest losses are much lower in a processed commodity. But then choose the right market. Maybe if I sell this grape juice to not to the European market, but to an African market, but to a Southeast Asian market, to a Korean market, to a Singapore market, where you have a trade agreement and escalations are not there, it does make a lot of sense. So it's all about taking the informed choice. The next thing that you have to very, very initially talk about in the agriculture sector is the time of entry into the market, which technically means that, for example, let me give you an example. Suppose there's a concept of tariff, there's a concept of tariff rate quota in the agriculture sector. And what is the difference between a quota and a tariff rate quota? Quota is suppose I was manufacturing a t-shirt and US says that I have an import quota of 10,000 t-shirts. Now, the minute my 10,000 t-shirts import is sufficed, any consignment coming from any country, I mean, I don't bother. My import appetite is to import 10,000 t-shirts, right? Whether it comes from Africa or from Pakistan or from Bangladesh, India, Mexico, I don't care. The minute my import appetite of 10,000 t-shirts is filled, I return back all the shipments that are beyond my import quota because I don't want to import. But in case of agricultural sector, what happens is because there is a concept of perishability involved into it, which technically means that if I am a seller of tomatoes and I reach the US port, I reach the Japanese port, and the quota was 10,000 tons. So by the time your consignment reaches the Chinese port, the Japanese port, your competing player, maybe Spanish tomatoes, have just filled the quota one day back. Now you are slightly late. By the time you finish the quota, now if there would have been a similar concept of quota, the Japanese would have said, take your tomatoes back. I don't need them because my quota of 10,000 tons is fulfilled. Now you are selling tomatoes. You are not selling t-shirts. By the time you bring the tomatoes back, it's a waste of money for you. So because agricultural commodities have a concept of perishability involved in it, therefore they have a concept of tariff rate quota, which means that for every agricultural commodity, countries have the liberty to decide on two rates of quota. In quota rate, which is much lesser because 10,000 ton is an import appetite of the country. So until the quotas are filled, if your company is able to reach and cross and clear the customs, 4% is in quota duty rate because you're not a threat to them. They need 10,000 tons. After 10,000 ton, every ton or any additional amount is a liability for them, and you are technically giving competition to the local units producing the same commodity. Therefore, they don't want to import. But as a rule of the game, they are supposed to import, allow you. But then they said, I will not allow you at the same rate of duty. So they will say, you take a call as a company. You want to take your tomatoes back and sell it back into your country or in the transit country, whichever you want to. But if you want to enter my country, I am just doing a favor to you by allowing you even after my quotas are filled. And why am I not allowing? Why am I apprehensive as a buyer? Because somewhere down the line, if I import beyond my requirement, then in my own country, supply will be more than the demand, and the prices will fall. My local farmer producing tomatoes will suffer. Therefore, I did not want to import. But since you're insisting, and there's a rule of the game, so I'll fix a very high rate of duty, say 400 out of quota duty rate. So it is all about timing. So even if I want to become a good trader, it is my responsibility to actually see the commodity that I'm procuring and the buyer where I'm looking for. Does it have a tariff rate quota in my commodity? What is the quota volume? What is the in quota duty rate? What is the out of quota duty rate? Suppose I'm a rice trader and I have two choices. I have fetched a buyer in Japan and I'm a rice trader. Now I have two choices. Should I go to India or should I go to Nigeria? Or should I go to Pakistan? So I technically will try, and there's a very less quota volume. And I, as a trader, I always wanted to look for an in quota duty rate. So I will look for the country where slightly the prices of rice are higher, but if it is logistically nearer, and I can avail the in quota duty rate of 4%, I might as well end up buying not from Pakistan or Africa, I end up buying from India because we are relatively logistically nearer. Because in this case of tariff rate quota, the timing becomes very important to decide what duty will you face as a trader. So, what we need to understand now, why are we discussing this in class today? Is for a simple reason, आप एक policy maker हो. Suppose you are sitting as a state agricultural officer in my audience today. Now, what used to happen in case of India was that because of the delay in custom clearances, a delay, Indian shipments were not able to leave the port at the right time. Congestion on the port, documentation took a very long time. So most of the time, my competitors used to fill the in quota, and by the time Indian commodities used to reach the same market, our exporters ended up paying a very high out of quota duty rate. And that was actually not giving us a repeat order from the buyer. So that I will not give order to India. You may be the largest producer of rice in the world, but your custom clearance takes so much of long time that आप उस country का कभी भी in quota में you are not able to enter the in quota duty rate. So administratively, this slide gives a lot of insight to a trader about timing, to a trader about the quota volumes, to a trader about the sourcing preferences, to policymaker from the point of why you should expedite custom clearances in order to avail and facilitate your companies to reach faster as compared to your competing players to avail lower rate of duties if you ever want to take the opportunities that coronavirus is offering India, right? Otherwise, world will take over. Then we have to take a call from a subsidies perspective. Which country is offering which agricultural subsidies to which market? And therefore, like for example, India has been challenged for its minimum support price at the WTO forum. So what is the stand in terms of India minimum support price concepts at under the WTO Amber Box policy? So we need to take a call. Similar MSP like situation, if you have a competition in the country where you are selling, or your competitors are trying to give you this similar kind of subsidy structures, if they're able to subsidize as a result of this pandemic, if they're able to convince WTO and offer the subsidies, their products will be much cheaper as compared to the similar Indian commodities coming, and that becomes a concern for me. And then comes the quality issues. Now, I will try to give you some very prominent quality issues before I finish the session today. Now, traceability is something that is becoming the need of the hour, which means a very simple thing. I am, for example, is a manufacturer of, say, fruit juices. So I obviously have a factory in Delhi, and I invest into manufacturing fruit juices. Now I go to the nearest mandi and I buy fruits because they will act as a raw material for my juice factory. Now, when I export these juices to the European market or to the Japanese market, they will say, "Do you really know from where these raw materials have come to the mandi?" Now you're lost because a traceability certificate would demand the entire details a company has to have. एक्सपोर्टर के पास ये पूरा डिटेल्स होना चाहिए that if I'm going to the nearest mandi of agriculture to procure apples and pomegranates, and this is a mixed fruit juice that I'm trying to develop in my factory. Now, this is a global requirement, whether I'm sitting in Africa and making this export news, or I'm sitting in Nepal or India, wherever. The market where you're trying to export will ask you for the entire supply chain details. That do you know the last bit, the very first farmer, where is the farmer of your oranges for which the oranges have been made in your factory? Now, this was considering the unorganized sector. So it's not about the production quantities that we need to. Time is not to brag that we are the largest producer of potatoes and bananas and oranges. How organized are you? And that is the reason in your new export policy, there's a concept of farmer producers organization. Government has a logic behind it. They want to bring consortiums amongst farmers so that the APMC Acts have been revised where companies can directly go to the farmer producers organization and directly interact and negotiate prices with them. So that is improvising my supply chain to a certain extent. That also gives me an opportunity to technically establish my traceability systems because I know who is the farmer from which I've procured. So if somebody asks me that, do you know the source, I have the entire traceability systems established, and that will help me establish credentials because after COVID-19, countries are ready to offer lesser import duties, but you just have to give them that your product is COVID-19 compliance. So there's a lot of consumer perception shift. They're ready to break down their import duty structures. They just want to be very, very sure. And in post COVID-19 perspective, how safe a commodity is to consume is the biggest priority of any importing country. So therefore, the focus on traceability and an exporter knowing the entire value chain becomes all the more important in terms of the traceability. And this is how our traceability systems are managed in Japan. You have RFID chips when fruits move from one hand to another. The way we trace our couriers is what they trace. So if you look into companies like TCS, companies like Cargill, these companies have started investing after post-corona. They've started investing in blockchain technologies just to establish the traceability systems, right? So there's a company called Livestock Monitoring. This is JMB in very beautiful example of meat and dairy traceability. And it is a boon in the COVID era. So they actually have RFID tags attached on the in the ears of the cattle, and the large farm owners can utilize their wireless IoT systems to help them identify the animals that are sick, so they can be separated from the herd and prevent the spread of disease. So it's a very interesting concept about these technology interventions in the agricultural sector, blockchain technologies, because people really are very scared to import agro commodities from you, right? Then we can talk about uh, non-tariff barriers when it comes to grading standard. I'm giving you certain pictures that you see on the left hand side. I'll give you an example. When Pepsi wanted to buy big time potatoes from India, they went to 11 states in India, friends, and we couldn't give them potatoes for their Raffles ships. Why we couldn't offer them? and the entire contract went to China. On the right hand side is what China offered, and on the left hand side is what India offered. Left hand side, you see the way a lady in the village is sitting and doing grading. छोटा आलू एक bucket में, बड़ा आलू एक bucket में, medium size आलू तीसरे bucket में. This is how the manual gradings are done. Now, a professional company like Pepsi who wanted to buy these bananas from India, they wanted to buy these potatoes from India for making their chips. Their priority was they wanted exact similar size of potatoes. And what you see on the right hand side is technically the Chinese way of handling. Vernier calipers say they are measuring the diameter of every potato that is being supplied. So if you have to take the opportunity of rising consumer demand in the global market, we need to make our EGMARK standard as a mandatory standard, which is our grading standard controlled by DMI. So otherwise, it is very, very difficult. There may be a huge demand, but your competitors will make the show and India will actually fall apart. So I'm just trying to give you a SWOT analysis of this whole system. There's a company, guys, Intello Labs. ये लोग क्या करते हैं? They are doing that, you don't have to manually grade the system. They have an agricultural grading machine. सिर्फ photograph लेके they इनके पूरा solution है. They read the image in the lot farmer has taken on his phone, and they determine the entire without any manual intervention, right? So there is another smart agricultural marketplace, and they have developed the entire aggregation and food traceability systems where right from farm to fork, every commodity as and when they move, it is actually a smart agricultural marketplace. So not that companies are not doing it, a lot of private initiatives that have been coming. It is all the responsibility of the traders, of the policymakers, state level agricultural officer to actually hunt for these technology companies and try to implement them and give a hands-on training to their farmers. कि चलता कैसे है? What does it mean? And how, as a responsible policymaker and administrator at that level, there is a demand which is in favor of India, but then we need to prepare India as soon as possible to exploit these consumption patterns. Then comes a very interesting concept called as foot miles. There are environmental regulations coming up in the market. I will give you an example. India may be the largest producer of rice in the world, but Indian rice consume a lot of water. So there is another, I'll come back to foot miles. Before I want to show you what concept of water footprint. अब आप देखोगे blue color का जो sign है sir, that is कितना पानी हम लगाते हैं to produce our water footprint. You see China हमसे कम पानी लगाता है. Vietnam is much lesser water consumption. So floriculture production हो गया in terms of roads, in terms of rice. I mean, they are using entire leather market as well to the Vietnamese market, to Taiwanese market, क्योंकि हम अपने पूरे production process में बहुत पानी बर्बाद करते हैं. And the next world war will be technically on water. So water stress is something that is extremely important in the eyes of a foreign buyer. कि डिमांड तो है पर मैं तुमसे नहीं खरीदूंगा बिकॉज तुम पानी बहुत बर्बाद करते हो तो मैं वियतनाम से खरीदूंगा. सो इट्स नॉट ओनली अबाउट अ क्रेजी शिफ्ट टुवर्ड्स इंडिया. You need to be prepared that where is the consumption pattern going and what do I need to do in order to exploit this. So technically, because there are certain startups like smart greenhouses. They have actually come out with IT-enabled systems where they have IoT sensors which actually gives the information कि आप कितना पानी waste कर रहे हो, how much light have you used, what is the pressure, what is the humidity level, what is the amount of water and irrigation that you have done. And that will technically help companies to come out with water footprint concept. Once a product is manufactured in the company, there's another environmental concern that's growing in the eyes of the Western buyers is how much have what is the distance that you have traveled to reach me? Are you polluting the environment at the cost of trade? So I was sitting in Delhi and I wanted to sell my commodities to Africa. Now I have two choices on the east coast, on the west coast. I can use Gujarat port, I can also use Mumbai port. But because of whatever reason, the Gujarat port was much nearer to me as compared to the Mumbai port. But because I have my own licensing with one officer there, I've been exporting and utilizing Mumbai port. So I didn't even bother to check my exit port. You will lose on the foot mile concept, which technically means please prove that this is the shortest distance that you have used. Otherwise, in order to reach me, you are consuming that much of energy, your trucks are moving more than required, your ships are moving more than required. You are basically polluting the environment to reach me. So this is basically certifications in the global market to prove the shortest shipping distance becomes a competitive advantage. If Indian exporters start looking into this whole concept of foot mile, there are startups that have come out. There's the transportation optimization softwares that traders are using globally, where a real-time data is fed, and they will tell you which is the route, which is the port, and how you reach the port to actually come out with the most optimized transportation. And automatically, when you go to the software, you get that foot mile certificate. So that's one thing that's very interesting. Then there comes beyond environmental and non-tariff barrier, there comes a concept of social certifications. When India was losing a market, when Latin America wanted to have greater sales of their bananas, you see the certificate that they have. This logo is called as a fair trade logo. This is a Thailand shop that you see in the center. The shops in Southeast Asia claims on their logo on their board that this is a fair trade shop, and this fair trade and this technically this fair trade shop is technically helping the exporters to enter and assure. What is the meaning of fair trade? As the name suggests, fair trade. This means what happens in India is I procure the I procure an agricultural produce at a very cheap price from the farmer. Then it goes in 10 hands. Kacha artiya, pakka artiya, then it goes to the mandi, and then so many hands before it reaches the final consumer. And think about a consumer sitting in the foreign market. So by the time the produce reaches the foreign market, and if it is sold at $100, the farmer's share in that $100 may be just $1. Is it a fair trade? The guy who's actually the producer of a commodity doesn't get the price of that commodity. And that's exactly is called as fair trade, where you are assuring to your foreign supplier, buyer, that, sir, maybe I am an exporter, maybe I'm a trader, but the, the money that you spend on my product, it is equally shared by the guy who's actually the producer, and the farmer in this case. That's what that's what Kit Kat chocolates have done. When Kit Kat market share was falling, they actually made that story, and their brand story revolved around the fair trade. They said we actually procured this cocoa from the Ivory Coast, and जो भी पैसा मुझे मिलता है, I'm trying to develop the farmers and improving their social conditions. And suddenly, this story, a properly audited story, actually increased consumer perception, and the buying preferences went because consumers invest does not even think about it. And trust me, these are small ways. Take care of your sourcing, take care of the import duties, take care of social certifications, take care of environmental concepts. In totality, that will help us to actually answer the question what I should sell, where I should sell, to whom I should sell, at what time should I sell, at what price should I sell. So that's exactly is what the APIDA. If you go to APIDA website, one of the recent initiatives is what we have taken is every day we are posting an in-depth market research on product market intelligence, on consumer behavior, on preferences, on changing. Please visit apida.gov.in and you will get all these information. दुनिया में किस country में क्या changes किए हैं, क्यों किए हैं, anything that can give you किस market में क्या चीज खाई जाती है, किसका import बढ़ रहा है. All this information is done through an APIDA market intelligence cell. So I request the audience, please visit the APIDA site. It is very in-depth information that you will find on most of the issues that we are sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Your wonderful presentation. Madam will be touch look and corner of agriculture scenario in India, and what is the export opportunities are there in India, and what is the policy need to be reforms, how to export, what is the quality should be maintained for raw produce as well as the processed product, and what is the opportunities for the India for export to other countries, which are the countries are there for importing the agriculture commodities, and what is the industries are doing in different countries. So everything you are covered, madam. Thank you so much. Now I request participant, you can ask the question. Any clarifications are there? You can unmute your unmute and they can ask the question. Otherwise, you can write the question in the chat box. So we can, madam will be give the answer for your question.
Hello.
Yeah, please ask the question.
Hello.
Please.
Yes.
Hello.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, I would last ask. I would like to ask, ma'am, where can we get the organic norms so we can produce the agriculture product on that norms? Means, as you said, the broccoli has an extensive market in USA. So, what are the norms to produce it in organic way?
I can give you certain websites.
Okay, ma'am.
You can actually note down this website. If you put in Google GAIN.
Yes, ma'am. CAIN.
It stands for Global Agri Information Network. Is my Google visible to all of you?
No, ma'am, till not. It's not visible till now.
Okay, you can just type on Google GAIN, which is Global Agri Information Network. Just type GAIN plus import regulations plus organic plus the name of the country, and you get the document.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, these are reports done by United States FDA for their own exporters and farmers, and the law applicable for US is also applicable for us, so you can utilize these reports available free of cost.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a good lecture. Really, it was very informative and we didn't know many things. I'm Rajeshwari speaking from University of Agriculture Sciences, Harvard, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, like recently, the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, she announced a lot of incentives for beekeeping, ma'am. Hello?
Right. Yeah.
Ha, ma'am. So, will suppose a lot of honey is produced, will government make an intervention in exporting the honey, ma'am?
See, government is not making any intervention specifically to a crop. Okay.
Okay.
But yes,
okay.
Now what government is doing, since because of the social distancing concept and the hesitance to move from one country to another, so the trade fairs that were happening initially by the where MSMEs and farmers were participating by the government support. Now all these will happen as a virtual trade fair. So government is big time investing not only honey but all the commodities of the agriculture and many other commodities. They're trying to have a virtual trade fair where all the exporters, and there will be product specific fairs as well, where commodity exporters can showcase their products, and it will be like an online trade fair. So that is the benefit that government is trying to work not only for honey, but it goes across all sectors, which honey exporters can also utilize.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, it was quite insightful that you tell about the export tariffs, but as you marked about the prices, like you told, India is also offering some of the prices that is 6470 approximately, and other countries are also there which are exporting, which are offering the less prices. So, what, according to you, that India should come up with the policies to come to reduce those prices so that we can have at least a competitive edge in the world, ma'am?
That's exactly was my next slide. if you paid attention, Sunidhi, that after
Yes, ma'am.
discussing the price, we discussed the causes of price and the policy interventions to reduce those price. We've already done that from a policy
Ma'am,
standpoint, Land Ceiling Act, trying to make consortiums, farmer producers organizations, supply chain interventions where you reduce the middleman to reach the farmer directly. So this will all in totality will help you become more price competitive.
ma'am, but if we see the ground reality, as you talked about the consortium and that supply chain, but if we see at the ground level, these things seems to be quite difficult to opt, ma'am, for
No,
the Indian
APMC
farmer
Act,
scenario.
it's just round the corner. The parliament is coming to make the APMC Act completely revamp the act, where companies, you have a concept of RAM, you have a concept of GRAM, where you have Grameen agricultural markets, where companies, if they want to procure for export, they can actually go to the farmer directly, which otherwise was not allowed. So there are a lot of such marketing policy changes which are in the way, and this is all the effort to make ourselves more competitive.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank
Hi, good morning, ma'am.
you. Good morning.
My question is like, are there any websites to find the buyers in different countries? Are they looking?
Yes, the website for finding buyers, I can leave it in a chat box. It's
Okay,
goforworldbusiness.com. You have, there are almost 25 websites. Maybe I can forward it to Dr. Hema and she can forward it in case you're interested. So there are list
yes,
of
yes, yes.
25. Some of them are paid, some of them are free of cost, but you can pick and choose as per your feasibility.
Can you please pass down the
I will
information?
pass on the buyers list to Dr. Hema. Not an issue. Not an issue.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
So can we call it off if there is no other questions?
Yes.
You're more than happy to write to me. I have given my email ID on the last slide. So in case you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Participant, do you have any question? Okay. Thank you so much, madam. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. So now I would like to request Dr. Surendra Singh, Senior Deputy Director for Onboard for presentation. Sir, please.
Is audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yes, yes, yes. Hello?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. You can start the session, sir.
We have the participants from universities, we have the participants, we have the FPOs with us, and those who are at the moment are basically in domestic agriculture business and they want to get into an agriculture export business. So if you want to start an agriculture export business, you need to have a very sound understanding of how to do business in the international market. Because see that doing business in domestic market and doing business in international market is very different. It's a completely different game. Or together. So registration for set of license, you need to start. Hello. Yes. Can we move the slide? Satinder. Satinder.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you please move the slide? But I'm not. Yes. So first, in order to start an export-import business, first, what you need to do, you need to basically set up in a firm, and the firms can be set up in a different ways. It could be in a proprietorship and a PAN for an IEC. IEC is basically an import-export code, which is issued by the DGFT through its regional offices, and DGFT has $37.
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir. नहीं कोई hello
If you are
hello sir, your voice is not audible, sir. Hello.
okay. Okay. So you can also set up in a firm in partnership. The two-person they can set up the firm, and the partnership can be written and approved to set up in a firm. And the third is that private, public, non-profit company, which can also be set up under the Companies Act 2013. And if in a public company which wants to get into an export-import business, they have to basically complete they have to basically complete the SEBI formalities. And the limited liability partnerships are under the Limited Liability Act and Hindu Undivided Family and the cooperative. So these are the different ways by which you can basically set up a firm to start an export-import business. Can we move to the next slide? So as I told that IEC is issued by the deal, but I'm not able to share the I'm not able to share the screen with you people. Hello.
Sir, screen sharing is on, sir. ये टेक्निकल इशू क्या कर देंगे जी? कोई ऑन किया? डॉक गया? कंप्लीट है क्या? ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಇದೇನು ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಬಸವರಾಜ ಪೀಕ್ ಅಂತ ಬಂತಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ
Business. If you are into Hello, Satinder. Hello.
Sir, you're audible, sir. Please start, sir. Please.
Yes. So ANF2, this is basically in a form which I've just showed you on the screen. Share that you have to basically fill this application form online, and along with this, you have to basically provide some documents, such as a copy of address book, PAN card, and copy of farm registrations, and demand draft of 500 rupees, and bank certificate as indicated by NF. So these are certain documents which you require while applying for an IEC online. To get an IEC code, the simple 10-digit code which is issued by the DGFT to start an export-import business. So it is important to note that you cannot start an export and import business without an IEC number. So you need to have an IEC with you to start an agriculture export, to start an export-import business, whether you start for an industrial product or whether you start for an agriculture product. Next slide. So now you can look at the website of DGFT, that where you have to basically first you have to provide the online the PAN card details, and if you follow subsequent steps, you will come to know how to basically fill the forms. It is in a very easy and simple process by which you can basically provide the information required for ANF2. So you complete all the formalities or all the information, and you fill and you submit. And that it is a very facilitative and it is a very simple process by which you can basically complete the entire information. Next. Yes. Now that if bank certificate in proprietor partnership company and holding saving account with the bank under Appendix 18C, self-certified permanent account, sometimes 2 copies of passport size photographs which you have to basically give, demand draft. If you are submitting an online application, so in that case you will get a rebate of 25%. In fact, 25% online in your fee which you are paying for IEC, and self-address envelope and the stamp of 40 rupees. These are the documents which you have to basically keep in a separate file, and which will be asked by the which will be later asked by the user. You also need to have a digital signature code, and digital signature code which you have to basically you have to provide while applying for an IEC. So digital certificate for IEC registrations. So you have to basically to give your digital signature, which will for by the DGFT to issue an IEC registration code. So application, once you submit the application with the appropriate field and requisite document, IEC will be automatically generated. You will get an SMS or you can get an email, whichever you have given your mobile number, email address. You can basically get the copy of EIC, that is an electronic IC, and the regional authority subsequently will follow on the post verification of the information you have basically shared, provided to the regional DGFT for applying IEC. And if the regional authority, if they find the information is wrong and if the information is incomplete, and the the regional office can basically take an action and can suspend the IEC and can also terminate the IEC and can also initiate any criminal actions if the wrong information and the complete information is provided by the applicant of IEC. So you have to basically also update the IEC profiles, and in terms of the products of the trail information which is required, and that you can also look at for this you need to look at in a form of handbook of procedure of 2015 and 20, where you get the information regarding what set of information you basically need to upload, need to update in your profile. So every IC which is issued by the DGFT, it requires updating in profile immediately, and in case of change in IC, the profile update needs to be done at least once in a year, as per the current 2.15 of handbook of procedure. foreign trade policy. Then that once you very detailed understanding of export-import policy and export-import policy, which basically provides a direction and guide that how you can basically start an export-import business. So while reading an export-import policy, that export and import policy is basically divided into two schedules. One is an schedule 1, which deals with an import policy, and the schedule 2, which basically deals in with an export policy. And the policy, and it is divided into 98 chapter and 21 sections and 12,000 tariff lines. In fact, you can go to the CBIC websites and you can go to the custom sections, and there is a tariff sections where you can look at all the chapters, the 98 chapters, and there are 21 sections and the 12,000 tariff lines. And India at the moment trades only on the 5,500 tariff lines. So chapter 99 is reserved for the temporary legislation. It is basically used by the government, so it is not used by the exporting community. So it is for the temporary legislation and used by the central government. So tariffs harmonized at a global, WCO has basically harmonized the tariffs at a 6-digit level, and Indian classification is available at a 8-digit level. But in case of developed countries, we talk about US and European Union, and there are countries where the tariff classification is also at a 10-digit level and even a 12-digit level. So the most of the trade which is happening at a global level, so the tariffs are harmonized at a 6-digit level, and WCO is continuously working in terms of harmonization of tariff classifications, and they're moving from 6-digit to 8-digit, because over the period of time we are making progress in terms of we are adding new HS codes which are coming under different chapters and under different tariffs of headings. So when we talk about the chapter, so chapter is basically defined at a 2-digit level. Let us take an example of agriculture. For agriculture, we have chapter from chapter 1 to 24. We deal with an agriculture products, and which also includes there are certain chapters which also deal with the processed food items. So from chapter 1 to chapter 24 at a 2-digit level, we call them at a 2-digit level. At a 4-digit level, when you basically go at a disaggregated level, so you can look at the details of the product at a 4-digit level, which gives you a relatively a comprehensive information. But it doesn't give an accurate information because you need to go deeper into to identify the specific products. So for that, you need to go at a 6-digit level. Satendra, can you please move the slides? Because at the moment I am at slide number 10. Slide number 10. And at a 6-digit level, you will get more detail about the products, and at subheading levels, and also 8-digit level, you get precise information about the product. For example, that let us say that if you are an agriculture exporter of a potato, so if you want to get the exact detail that what is the duty imposed at a 8-digit level or 6-digit level, so you have to basically what is the duty which is imposed on import of potato, let us say in Bangladesh. So you have to basically go at a 8-digit level or a 6-digit level to know the exact duty which is basically imposed at a 6-digit or 8-digit level. But it is important to understand that whenever you are venturing into an export-import business, because the most of the international trade transactions, they either take place at a 6-digit level or a 8-digit level. 8-digit level, because the 4-digit and 2-digit level, these are basically for the policy analysis. These are not for the purpose of international trade transactions, because they will give a very macro overview, they will give a very broad understandings, which will not be useful from a trader perspective, from an agriculture exporter and importer perspective. So it is important to look at the tariff classification at a 6-digit level or 8-digit level to understand the duties which are imposed, the MFN import duties, and also the preferential duties, which are preferential duties under the different regional trading agreements on agriculture products. So you can basically, you need to go at a 6-digit level and 10-digit level. So as we have this internet connectivity problem, otherwise I would have showed that how we can basically read how we can basically read this tariff classifications, and that how the chapter, how the information is basically how the tariff classification is given at the 2-digit level, 4-digit level, 6-digit level, and 8-digit level. But important to bear in mind that the trade takes place at a 6-digit level and 8-digit level. So that is something which you have to basically keep in mind. So any product which is coming to India, any agriculture product which is imported in India, so we basically impose duty at a 8-digit level. And in case of country like Bangladesh, in LDC countries, the duties are basically imposed at a 6-digit level because they have not gone for any disaggregated analysis of tariff classification, because still these countries are working in terms of harmonizing their trade policy, in terms of harmonizing their tariff classification with the WCO WCO tariff harmonization. So now look at that. What is the purpose of accession? How it basically helps to the policymaker and exporters? Because if you look at a particular accession at a 6-digit level or 8-digit level, so you will be able to understand that when you are exporting in a product, so you will be able to know that what duty will be imposed on your product. So whether that what is the the current rate of the duty which will be imposed on your product which you are exporting, let us say in a US market or in European market. So the first thing, but it basically helps the fixation of the tariff. And the second is that you can basically also determination of application of duties and taxes and the different duties and taxes which are basically imposed. Other than the custom duties, there are certain countries where there are other types of duties which are basically used, such as a para tariff and anti-dumping. There are some or additional duties which are basically imposed on certain products. So you will be able to understand those duties with the help of HSN. So HSN basically helps you to understand different types of duties which your product is likely to face in the foreign market. And the collection and the compilation and the publication, dissemination of international trade statistics. So again, the international organizations, such as the World Trade Organizations and even the national government institutions dealing with the international trade, the Ministry of Commerce, they basically compile and collect and disseminate the international trade statistics, which are used by the researcher, academicians, and also by the exporters to understand the trend and the pattern of the exports. So that basically gives a broad understanding to the policymakers that how the trade is basically flowing in a particular product. Helps in framing rules of origin. Rules of origin is essentially basically a criteria by which you basically take a preferential benefit. Like, for example, India has a free trade agreement with Japan, India has a free trade agreement with ASEAN, with Sri Lanka, with South Korea, and with Malaysia, with ASEAN countries. So in order to avail the preferential benefits, so we have to basically comply with the rules of origin. Again, the rules of origins, they are at a rules of origin basically determine that where the product is basically originated and where it has been basically manufactured. But in case of agriculture products, most of the products, they are basically wholly obtained the exporters, they do not face much difficulties, because in case of wholly obtained and wholly owned products, so because they are produced only in a country and then they are exported. But the rules of origin has a rules when you are basically exporting in a raw agriculture products and which are basically processed in some other country and then exported to some other country. So let us say that if India is exporting orange juice to the international market, and orange are, let us say, imported from some other country and they are processed. So in that case, you have to basically look at the substantial transformation, whether it has taken place or not, whether the value addition which is being prescribed by the trade agreement under which the rules of origin has been negotiated, that whether the exported products basically meet with the value addition criteria or not. So in a sense, that rules of origin is also important to get any preferential trade benefits in other countries. So monitoring restricted and prohibited goods, because see that under the trade policy, goods are basically classified under free category, restricted category, and prohibited category. Free products are those which are allowed to be exported. You are free to export. There is no restrictions, and you need not to take any permission from the DGFT. But in case of restricted product, there are certain special license which you have to basically take it from. For example, there are certain industrial products where we basically see that the uraniums, and there are certain agriculture products which are not allowed to be exported, for which they are restricted to be exported. So for which you have to basically take the license from the DGFT. This happen only in the cases when we have a domestic shortage. Taken an example of onion, the last year, few months back, we had a shortage of onion in our country, so government put in a ban on the export of onion in the international market. So this also highlights that our trade policy is unstable in a sense that when you have a higher international prices for onions, where you can basically export, which can basically help your farmers to basically realize higher price, but they are not able to export because the government has basically put in a ban and put in a restriction on the export of onion to the international market. So it basically affects the farmer the most, and that also sense that our foreign trade policy is basically in urban biased, and that it basically gives more preference to the consumer over the farmers, and that basically hurts to our farmers whenever they have an opportunity in the international market in terms of higher price where domestic prices are low. So they want to basically encash that opportunity, but they are not able to encash because of the policy instability. And that has been the case not only in the example which I've given, but there are many other commodities which we have seen. In a study carried out by Professor Ashok Gulati, where they have basically seen that the agriculture products are subject to export ban and export restrictions. And they have taken analysis, they have carried out analysis over the period of 2007 to 2017. And they have found that in the most of the cases, we have basically put on a blanket ban on the export, or we have restricted the export. So that gives a bad signal to the international importers who basically rely on India to import agriculture products, because they find it that India's agriculture trade policy is not stable, and so it is better to identify other suppliers. So that basically hurt the Indian exporters the most and Indian farmers. And also the quota controls. So the countries also use quota to restrict the import of a particular commodity. So by HSN, with the help of HSN, you can understand that whether the quota has been basically restricted on the quota has been imposed on the product or not, and if there is a quota, that how much you can export. So it basically helps you to understand that there is a quota control on the product. And then the economic and research analysis, which you can carry it out by using the HSN, and you can basically do analysis at the 8-digit level to understand the specific volume of trade which is basically happening in a particular commodity. And then we move to the registration come export incentive benefits. Recession come export incentive benefits. So there are benefits under the foreign trade policy. If you read the chapter 3 of the foreign trade policy, Satinder, I am there. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please present, sir. Please.
Registration come membership certificate. So that you have to basically take a registration come membership certificate to avail the export promotion benefits under the foreign trade policy chapter 3, that mercantile exports from India scheme and service exports from India schemes. These are the two schemes. Now these schemes are basically being challenged in the WTO, and we don't know the future of these schemes, but so far, because of the pandemic, the government is still continuing these two schemes for the next 1 year, and but for the next financial year. So MEA is mercantile export from India schemes, and if you want to take the duty credit script and you want to get export promotion benefits on the product which you are exporting in the international market, so you can avail the duty credit scripts, and the countries are basically categorized in 3 categories: category A, category B, and category C. And under category A, that we have the traditional markets such as in the EU and US, because we are trading with the traditional market a lot. And under category B and category C, that we have some thriving market, we have some new markets such as the Latin American and Central Asian markets. So the duty credit script benefits under category are lower than the category B and category C. So duty credit scripts are different from product to product, and they range between from 2% to 5%, depending upon the product and depending upon the market where you are basically exporting in a product. So in order to get an export incentives and export promotion benefits, you have to basically apply for a registration cum membership certificate, and which is issued by the export promotion councils. Like in case of agriculture products, so we have an dedicated agriculture export promotion council. We have commodity boards, like for example cashew commodity board, spice. So for different agriculture commodity boards, which basically issue the the registration cum membership certificate, that is called an RCMC, and it basically helps you to realize the export incentives of your exported commodities. Federation of Indian Export Organization also provides RCMC. You can also avail your export benefits under the trade policy. So whichever product you are exporting and whatever benefits is given under the foreign trade policy, you need to look at the FTP and you need to look at the countries which are defined as in a category A, B, C. So you can basically avail the benefits under the trade policy. So for that, you have to basically look at an appendix 2 of the foreign trade policy, which basically provide the details regarding that how you can basically get a registration cum membership certificate. So you have to basically approach to your respective export promotion councils to avail the export incentives and export benefits. So let us move to agriculture trades. If we look at the agriculture trade, so that in the last 4 years, what we have seen that our total agriculture export, if you look at the share of agriculture export in the total export, it is approximately 10%. And our agriculture exports are stagnant in a sense that our exports, they were around 38 billion in 2014, and in 2018, and they declined slightly 35 billion. So in terms of, we are not able to improve our exports. In 2015 and 2016, we have seen a decline in our exports. So there is a mixed trend in terms of our agriculture exports, but still that we are stagnant. We are not able to increase our share in terms of total agriculture exports. So if you look at our agriculture imports, in case of agriculture, again in agriculture imports are stagnant. In 2014, the total imports were 19.42 billion. In 2018, 19.74 billions. So again, both export and imports, they are stagnant. Our agriculture imports are not increasing, but at the same time, our agriculture exports are not increasing. And if you look at the top 10 agriculture exports, most of the exports are basically concentrated under HSN 10 at a chapter 2 digit, and HSN 3 and HSN 2. That basically cereals, fish, and meat. These are the 3 product items which basically contribute in a major share in total agriculture exports. So it means that agriculture exports are highly concentrated, and there is an opportunity to diversify, because we are not exporting the value-added agriculture exports. What we are exporting the raw agriculture products. We are just exporting the raw agriculture product to the international market. So we need to focus on promoting value-added agriculture products. But we also need to look at that the global demand is basically shifting from cereals to high value-added agriculture imports. So that is why we also need to shift from traditional export items to a new export item, so that we can basically link our agriculture export with the global agriculture demand. Similarly, in case of agriculture imports, in case of agriculture, so our significant portion of agriculture imports are basically under chapter 15, that is in animal and vegetable fats and the edible fruits and nuts and edible vegetables. So these are the few product categories where our agriculture imports are concentrated. Because see that one has to also keep in mind that when we are talking about promoting agriculture exports, we have to basically look at the agriculture production, we have to look at the agriculture consumption, we have to also look at the agriculture exports. Because see that India is a country of 135 billion people, so we are the biggest consumer in the world. So whatever we produce, we also consume. So we have to basically meet first with the domestic demand and whatever surplus which we have to basically export in the international market. But we are not able to export in the international market because that our agriculture products, they face certain quality issues, they face higher standards, the higher technical requirement of the other countries, and we do not have the economies of scale, and that land holding pattern is highly fragmented, and our agriculture sector is highly disorganized. So, and most importantly, agriculture is a state subject, and whereas the agriculture trade is a central subject, and there is a lack of coordination between the central and the state government on agriculture on agriculture trade related issues. Now we come to that the specific issues which agriculture export is basically facing the demand side issues and the supply side issues. When it comes to demand side issues, that our agriculture products, they basically face in a high import barriers in the international market. So India farm export basically face prohibitive import duties in international market. For example, you take an example of dairy products. That can you imagine that the duty which is imposed on India dairy products when they are exported to the EU market and the US market and the Japan market. In case if we are exporting dairy products and dairy related products to the EU markets, the import duty is more than 500%. In case of US, it is around 93%. In case of Japan, it is more than 600%. So you look at that, the import barriers which our agriculture products are facing in the developed countries. So that is why we are not able to export our agriculture products to the developed countries. So similarly, you can take an example of fruits and vegetable and oil seeds, which also attract an equal high import duties in EU and the Japan and the US market. As a matter of fact, that we have entered into a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Japan, and which was signed in 2010. But we failed to liberalize agriculture trade. We failed to get a better market access even under a preferential trade agreements. So that is in a clear case that even if we have entered into a trade agreement to get a more market access by liberalizing agriculture trade and general trade, but we are not able to secure because the countries are reluctant to open up their market even under the preferential trading arrangement. But there are also cases that where what we have seen that our agriculture domestic agriculture industry and the agriculture export is also affected by the trade agreements. Let me take a very specific example of India-Sri Lanka bilateral trade agreements. That most of the Indian companies which manufacture the famous called Vanaspati ghee, which we use for our cooking, and most of the Indian companies, they have shifted their production from India to Sri Lanka because India imposed a high import duty on palm oil which comes from Malaysia, because Malaysia is one of the leading producer of palm oil, and whereas the Sri Lanka, that the import duties on palm oil from Malaysia are very low. So now the Indian companies which are basically manufacturing Vanaspati ghee in Sri Lanka, and when it comes to the duty on the Vanaspati ghee in India, the duty is very low. It is almost zero on most of the agriculture commodities under the agreement on South Asia Free Trade Area and also the India South Asia bilateral trade agreement. So the most of the Indian Vanaspati ghee manufacturers, they have shifted their plant, they shifted their manufacturing in Sri Lanka. They are importing palm oil from Malaysia, manufacturing in Sri Lanka and exporting to India. So India has basically lost the market in palm oil. Similarly, you can take an example of India-ASEAN FTA, that what has happened in case of India-ASEAN FTA. So the rubber products. So Malaysia, Indonesia, they are also leading exporters of rubbers. So our rubber producer, particularly in the Kerala, because of tariff liberalization under the trade agreements. So in a sense that our imports of rubber and rubber products from ASEAN, they have increased significantly after signing the free trade agreement. So there is an issue with respect to trade agreements, and this basically this requires deeper introspection to understand that with which country we should sign a free trade agreement. We need to do a comprehensive analysis in terms of looking at the profile of the country with which we are signing the free trade agreement. And one of the issue in our free trade agreement is that if you look at an agriculture import duty in India, we have an average agriculture import duty of 36%, and whereas the agriculture import duty in other countries is basically relatively lower than India. So because if we have to basically liberalize our agriculture trade with respect to other countries, so they are not likely to lose because they have already liberalized their agriculture trade to a certain extent. But there are certain specific commodities where we have an interest. We must seek a better market access in terms of tariff liberalization in those commodities. So tariff remains an issue both in terms of import, also in terms of export of agriculture products. And the second issue that which we face that non-tariff barriers, which basically come in the form of standard testing and testing requirements, certification requirements. These are also the challenges, the non-tariff barriers. They emerge as a major threat to India's agriculture export to the international market. So let me share that we are not able to export agriculture products to China because China had China compulsory certification. So, for example, the buffalo meat that India can be a leading exporter. India can be one of the biggest exporter of buffalo meat to China, but because China is not approving the slaughterhouse in India, there are only 2-3 slaughterhouses which have been approved so far. So we are not able to export because they are not happy with the with the working environment and with the cleanliness of the of slaughterhouse in India. So they find major issues, and that is why they put on restrictions on buffalo imports from India. At the same time, they're importing it from China. So you see that how countries are basically restricting. Similarly, we face an issue of while exporting mango to European Union, and which later on lifted in 2015. And we have also seen the market denials in case of rice imports in case of Iran, because they found that their domestic industry is suffering. So that is why they put on a restriction. They put on a blanket ban on the rice imports, and which hurted India's rice exporters. Green pepper, and which we export to Saudi Arabia, but we are not able to export because South Korean, the food authorities, they are saying that it contains pesticides, it contains chemicals, so it is not safe for the consumption. So that is why they have basically put in a restriction on the import of green peppers. And similarly, you take an example, country like Bhutan, which is an LDC country, our neighboring country, which completely dependent on India for most of its trade because it is a landlocked country. So 90% of trade Bhutan carries out through India. So Bhutan has also imposed a ban on red chili, that they are not allowed the import of red chilies because that it contains the chemical called triazole. And because see that our farmers, they are not able to understand that the chemicals which they are basically using to produce an agricultural commodity, and that it has an impact when the product goes to an international market. So it basically reflects that there is a lack of coordination between the Indian foreign missions and the Department of Commerce and under the state government and the district authorities. So if there is a proper flow of information and there is a well coordinated action, that as the regulation comes in foreign country with respect to particular chemicals on the use of the particular chemicals, and it needs to be percolated to the farmers and to the district agriculture officers so that they can share those information with the farmers so that they can change the agriculture practices. And for that, we also need to bring regulation in a sense that how we can basically minimize the use of different types of pesticides and the chemicals which we are basically using. Let me share another example with respect to sanitary and phytosanitary. And a few years back, the European Union, they come up with an endocrine disruptor chemicals. So they come up with that the agriculture products which contain the properties of endocrine disruptor chemicals. So they will not be allowed to be imported in the European Union. So now you see that we have done an internal analysis where we have seen that there are more than 200 agriculture products where we find this property, that is endocrine disruptor, which is in a chemical chemical proposition. So that is found in the agriculture product. So it means that 200 agriculture products which we are exporting to the EU market because of the endocrine disruptor, this properties is found in agriculture product when they are tested in the labs, so they cannot be exported to those countries. Another issue which our agriculture exporters are basically facing is that export subsidies and that and the domestic support. See that at a WTO level, that agriculture subsidy is basically put in three box, that is called blue box, green box, and amber box. So the subsidies which fall under the amber box and the amber box, they are considered highly distorting subsidies because they distort to the trade, and the subsidies which are placed under the green box, particularly the subsidy on research and development, environment subsidies for environment producing products which are environment friendly, so they are not considered distorting subsidies. And then we have the subsidies under the blue box, which are also not considered. And look at the subsidy which different countries basically they gives. China spends approximately $150 billion direct and indirect to support their agriculture farmers. Japan spend approximately $65 billion. So India doesn't have the capacity, India doesn't have the financial resources as country like China, Japan, and the US and the European Union they have. So we cannot provide the subsidy to the farmers the way the subsidy is given in those countries. And moreover, our subsidy basically fall under the amber box, and the ceiling which is being prescribed under the agreement on agriculture, that you cannot give the subsidy of subsidy more than 10% of total production. But in case of wheat and rice, we have basically breached that 10% limits. So now that is why the US and the European Union, they have challenged India in the WTO that the subsidy which India is basically giving to its farmers is basically is distorting the international trade. But so far there are not evidence that which has proved that the subsidy which are given by the India to its farmer is basically is distorting the global trade. But one has to also understand that India cannot move away from its MSP schemes by which it basically gives the subsidy, because moving from MSP, because there are some inherent limitation with the MSP schemes which we understand, but we have to basically protect our farmers in a sense that we have to continue with our MSP schemes, because it is an again time consuming process by which we can basically move to an income based model. Again, we need to have a capacity to provide an income based support. And some of the states, such as in Madhya Pradesh, which has come up with a Bhavantar schemes by which they are basically giving a direct transfer to the farmers, and also Telangana, which has also come up with a similar schemes providing direct transfer to the farmers. But you have to also look at the physical space of the state, whether the state has the capacity to provide the subsidy to the farmer, to provide the direct transfer to the farmers or not. So that remains a key challenge for India's India's policymakers in terms of providing subsidies. Moving to the supply side, says that one of the challenge which all of us know, that the economies of scales, because see that land holding size is very small in India and the farmers are small. So most of the farmers India, and in fact even the exporters, they are micro, small, medium enterprise. In fact, more than 45% of India's exports is from micro, small, medium enterprise. So they do not operate at a scale so that they can be the part of the global agriculture value chain. So the economies of scales remain in a constraints, and also that basically create a challenge, and that basically affect the competitiveness of our agriculture export in the international market. So we are not cost competitive in the global agriculture market. And another factor which we basically note, that the high intermediaries and the inadequate and appropriate storage and distribution infrastructure. So let me take a very specific example of inadequate, appropriate storage and distribution. You've taken an example of Punjab, West Bengal, and UP. These are the three states that West Bengal is also a leading producer of potato. Punjab also produces potato. UP also produces potato. But if you look at the storage capacity, Punjab has the excess storage capacity, whereas the West Bengal and the UP, they do not have the sufficient storage capacity. So these two states, they face a lot of challenges. Few years back, when India opened up agriculture export of potato, and that the states which has the better agriculture trade infrastructure, they were able to export. So the Punjab farmers, they were able to realize a better price because they were able to store and they were able to export when the potato prices were going up in the international market. But whereas the farmers and whereas exporters in West Bengal and UP, they were not able to export because the agriculture trade infrastructure is very weak. So they were not able to capitalize, they were not able to leverage the higher price in the international markets, and they failed to export because of the poor storage and distribution infrastructure in these two states. And then we have basically the intermediaries. If you look at the agriculture value chain, so it starts from farmer, then we have a village merchant, we have middleman, we have wholesaler, we have commission agent, we have farm market, we have retailer, and then we have the exporters, then we have the total. So if you basically distribute the gains across the value chains, and you see that the farmers, they only get in at 20%. If let us say the end value and the price of the product is in 100%. So there are a lot of non-essential activities, like for example, the village merchant, which can be replaced, middleman, which can be replaced. So they around take away 25% of the total value of the product. And then we have commission agents, which is again a non-essential activities, which also affect. So the long agriculture value chains and the inefficient trade and transport infrastructure, that also create a lot of challenges. But if you look at the trade infrastructure, particularly that most of exports are basically from the western side, that is either from Navashava in Mumbai or Mundra, and also from Chennai. So these on the southern side, the Chennai port, it basically constituted a major share to total exports. But if you look at the trade infrastructure on the eastern side, particularly the trade infrastructures with the neighboring countries such as in India, Bangladesh, that is in a Petrapol, Benapol port. See that it takes 10 to 15 days to clear the consignment at a port. So that basically creates a lot of challenges for the agriculture exporter. See that you cannot wait for 10 to 15 days to export in a product, particularly the perishable nature of agriculture products. And so that basically creates a lot of difficulties for agriculture exporters to export to these countries. Similarly, in case of India, Nepal, that Raxol, but it takes 15 to 20 days to clear. Again, additionally, you have to basically pay the detention fee, you have to pay the additional charges, you have to pay the parking fees. So there are a number of other hassles, the procedural hassles which you have to pay, and there are other rent-seeking activities which basically put in a burden on exporters. So that is why that our exporters who see the opportunities in the neighboring countries, because they are not able to export because of the poor trade transport facilitations, and we are not able to improve. Even in fact, if we are exporting via sea routes such as in Mumbai or via Mundra port, there are a lot of challenges there because the shipping companies, they have the licensing, they have the close connection with the container freight stations, and which basically charge high prices for storing for keeping the consignment in the CFS, and the small exporters, they cannot basically they cannot handle. So these are the challenges which are with respect to the domestic agriculture supply chains, and we can substantially reduce the cost of export, that if we address the supply chain bottlenecks, specifically in the agriculture supply chain, which operates within India, starting from farmers to a retailer, but also the agriculture chains which connect the farmers to the international markets, where the exporters and the merchant traders are also the part of it. So we need to do a comprehensive analysis to understand that which part of the agriculture supply chain is not functioning properly, and how those challenges can be addressed, and how those challenges can be addressed, so that our exporters, they do not need to incur high transaction costs to export the product, and they are competitive in the international market. So by this, wind up my presentations, and I would request you to, if you have any specific questions with respect to my presentation, or you have any other questions in the context of COVID, you can ask to me, and I will be very happy to respond to your questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful presentation. And your touch each and what is the policies exactly saying to exporting agricultural commodities in India? What is HSCC code? How to use, how to read the data, and what is exactly the challenges they're facing as well as in government level and exporter levels. So how to overcome these challenges, all those things you are explained, sir. So now I would request all the participants, do you have any queries? You can ask the question to sir directly.
Hello, sir. My name is Ramakrishna. Hello.
Yeah, please ask question, Ramakrishna, please.
Sir, if you want to get into export-import business, like we can apply it directly at online, and then so we get the certificate. In order to trade, like start trading, so do we need to like rely on any firms or consultancies in order to for paperwork and all, or else we need to go for things?
Pardon you, your voice is not audible. Can you repeat your question once again?
Is it audible, sir? No?
Yes, it is audible.
Yeah. So in order to get into export imports business, so the application wise you just explained, like we can do it at online. So once we get the certificate or once we get registration is done, so do we need to rely on any consultancies or firms like to get to look into the paperwork and all, or we need to go for some trainings?
No, so it depends. That you see that for in terms of your export import documentation related activities, you see that, let us say that if you are based in Jaipur or you are exporting your product via Mumbai, so in that case that you can hire local CHAs which can basically complete the export import and the custom clearance related formalities. So you can engage, because see that you have to basically focus in terms of preparing your export. Preparing your export orders. You have to basically you have to comply with the requirements which are shared by the importer to you. So rather than investing your energy in terms of getting the clearance of the product at port, or in terms of completing the export import documentation related formalities and taking the permission from different regulatory agencies such as the Food Safety Standard Authority of India, Animal Quarantine, Plant Quarantine, whichever product you are basically exporting or importing, or EIC, Export Inspection Agency. So it would be better you focus on your products and you outsource these set of activities. And there are CHAs in Mumbai, so you can find out. So there are big CHAs who charge very high. There are CHAs who basically charge relatively lower. So it is up to you. It is your choice. But these services are available which you can use at different ports, and they will take care. They will take care of your consignment. They will get all the formalities done and get the consignment uploaded on the ship, and then they will hand over the documents to you, and which you can send to the importer for the payment.
Thank you, sir. So, like, do you have any suggested CHS or firms to go with?
Yes. I can give you the list of the CHAs, but I need to check in my database. So there are many CHAs in Mumbai, with which you can, or other way around, that if you just look for, just Google out, you will find the list of the CHAs, and there are some dedicated directories which can provide you, or maybe you can approach to the respective export promotion council. They can also help out in identifying the CHAs. Otherwise, you can also write to me. I will share the links of few CHAs.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Any question from participant side?
Hello.
Please.
Yeah,
sir, please ask me.
Yeah, it's very good presentation. is there any changes in the import-export policy, before and then after this post-COVID-19?
Yes, there is a change in the export-import policy because we were supposed to come with a new export-import policy this year, but we have postponed the new export-import policy. So whatever policy which we have at the moment, that is a 2015 to 2020 foreign trade policy, it will continue for next 1 year. So the next year we can expect the new foreign trade policy come. So there are certain schemes which the government was supposed to end by the last financial year, but we decided not to end because given this situation that the exporting community is suffering, and it would not be right that if we stop those schemes immediately. As I told that NEIS, that is a mercantile export from India schemes, which is very relevant for our agriculture exporters. So that's NEIS benefit, they will continue until 31st March 2021. So they can basically take the benefits. So other schemes like interest subvention schemes and the interest equalization schemes. So these are the schemes which are being challenged in the WTO. So they will remain in operation, and they will be continued for the next for this financial year. So these are some changes. And for the next 1 year, you have to basically rely on the foreign trade policy of 2015-20.
Any question from participant side? Sir, okay, sir. I hope there is no question from participant side, and I'm very much thankful to you, sir, to your presentation. Even though there is some small technical issues during the presentation, so now I would like to.
Yes, I apologize for the inconvenience to cause to you and also to the participant because of the poor internet connectivity, because net is not stable here. So, and I hope all of them understand that all of us are going through a very challenging time. So this remains an issue because everyone is using internet. So there is a bit instability in the internet connection.
Yes. Yes, okay, thank you, sir. So now I would like to request Director Dr. Hema Madam for your suggestion and vote of thanks.
First of all, many thanks. The whole issue about the agri-export scenario, informing the participants about how to register and how to get the certification, and then taking them through the challenges in the agri-export in the global market, which ranges from the tariff to non-tariff barriers that you have said. Was a very interesting session, very informative. I think it's the time that these participants need to know about all these information, which are available in books and the websites also, but hearing it straight from somebody, an expert like you, a practitioner like you, makes a lot of difference. The participants I have been seeing, they also had some good questions to you. So overall, this webinar has been very, in a sense that Dr. Tamanna took through you the country identification, and she took through the whole scenario of inefficiencies and how to overcome them. And then Dr. Surendra Singh kind of took over the whole session to a logical conclusion as to how we have to become more competitive by adhering to some registration formalities, subsidy norms has to be taken care. And of course, all this has to be in the larger framework of the foreign trade policy. I'm very thankful to you, Dr. Surendra Singh, Dr. Tamanna, for sharing your time and a valuable time with us and sharing your important PPTs, which we will be sharing with the participants. And thank you to each participant for being so patient and listening to us. We have all the queries in the chat box about sharing the list of the websites and sharing the other details that you have asked from the experts. We'll be kind of sending it to all of you and are in touch with you through the email. Thank you to each of you. Dr. Satya and team at NIAM. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vandal. Thank you.
Thank you.